and it has faced a lot of humanitarian crisis, instability, especially in the Rakhine state here, where the strategic Sitwe port built by India is located. Right? This is where the Kyokfu port of China is located as well. In the Rakhine state, there has been a lot of destabilization because of the Rohingya crisis. So let's understand this topic in slight detail, and then we'll close the chapter. So let's understand who are the Rohingyas. Rohingyas are a ethnic Muslim minority group. Rohingyas are an ethnic Muslim minority group, all right? And historically, they belong to the Chittagong and Cox's Bazar region that you see over here in the map. Historically, this is where the Rohingyas were found, in Chittagong region and Cox's Bazar region, which is today's Bangladesh. Is that clear? They are an ethnic Muslim minority group. See, a few centuries ago, before these borders were drawn, before colonial rule came here, there were different empires which ruled the region. We had the Ahom kingdom in Assam, the Mughal Empire, a few other Islamic empires here in today's Bangladesh and Myanmar, Buddhist kingdoms as well around today's Myanmar and Northeast India. So these boundaries did not exist. So historically, when these kingdoms and empires were there, especially under the Arakan kingdom, the Arakan is the name of a mountain range in Myanmar. It's a major mountain range in Myanmar called the Arakan mountain range. So when the Arakan kingdom existed here, which was predominantly a Muslim kingdom, the Rohingyas, who are ethnic Muslim minorities, they were settled here in Chittagong and Cox's Bazar area. They were essentially traders and merchants. All right, they were very prosperous, they were thriving, they were doing very well because they were trading from this region with India, with West Asia, Southeast Asia, and other parts of the world. So as traders and merchants, they became rich, they were doing very well. And over the course of time, due to some challenges they faced, due to political and also some disasters they faced, they moved from the region. They moved from Chittagong and Cox's Bazar, and they had settled in the Rakhine state of Myanmar. This was a natural migration that had happened several centuries ago. All right, this brought the Rohingyas into close proximity with the Buddhists of the Burma region, the Myanmar region. And after independence, after colonial rule ended, Myanmar, which was the new country that was born, started discriminating against the Rohingyas, especially the radical Buddhists. They resented the Muslim community because the Rohingyas were traders and merchants, they were rich, they were doing well, they were affluent. So the natives, the majority community, the radicals especially, they couldn't take this. They started resenting them and they started using their leverage with Myanmar's government to discriminate against them, especially after the army captured power in 1962. After Myanmar witnessed a military coup, the military and the radical Buddhists, they started working together. The army knew that it cannot hold power without the support of the radical Buddhists because Myanmar is a Buddhist majority country. And radical Buddhists have supported the army in order to get favors back to promote their radical version of religion. So the radical Buddhists and the Myanmar army and the government started discriminating and oppressing and targeting the Rohingyas. Is that clear? From 1960s itself, the Rohingyas have faced this challenge. From 1960s till date, they have faced a lot of discrimination, oppression, and targeted violence. What happened was Myanmar declared them as stateless and revoked their citizenship back in 1960s, 1970s itself. Myanmar took a very controversial stand that Rohingyas are not the citizens of Myanmar. Even though Rohingyas had settled here from centuries, for at least 200 to 300 years, Rohingyas had become part of Rakhine region. And yet, Myanmar de-recognized them through its citizenship laws. It revoked their citizenship and declared them stateless. Myanmar said Rohingyas are the responsibility of Bangladesh, not Myanmar. It asked Bangladesh to take them back. Previously, it was East Pakistan, of course. Later, it became Bangladesh. So Myanmar pushed the responsibility of Rohingyas on its neighboring country by blaming the other side, because Rohingyas came historically from Chittagong and Cox's Bazar area, which today was in East Pakistan and later in Bangladesh. So Myanmar rejected to accept the Rohingyas as its own citizens. It revoked their citizenship and it declared them as stateless people. So when a community, entire community is targeted, if their citizenship is revoked and made stateless, they will lose all the privileges and protection offered to the constitution. It becomes easy for them to be targeted by communal elements, and it resulted in large-scale communal attacks against the Rohingyas. The radical Buddhists would start targeting them. They would commit specific targeted violence in Rakhine region, thus violating the human rights of Rohingyas. So this has been an ongoing crisis. It's been going on for many, many decades. So those Rohingyas who have been targeted, who have been persecuted, many of them have fled the region. They have become refugees. They have entered Bangladesh, of course. They've tried going back to Chittagong and Cox's Bazar area, where they historically come from. Some of them have come to India seeking refuge over the decades, over the last 40 odd years. India has received around 40,000 Rohingya refugees. We have accommodated them in different parts of India. We haven't officially accepted them as refugees, but some of them have managed to sneak into India, and India was tolerating this because Rohingyas were facing a grave humanitarian crisis. We knew what Myanmar was doing, the atrocities that was being committed against Rohingya Muslims. So previously, India was quite open to accepting them, even though officially we didn't recognize them as refugees. We wouldn't prevent them from entering India because protecting refugees is a global obligation, international obligation. It's a question of human rights. It's inherent to a democratic constitution, and it's part of international law. So India has respected this commitment usually. We've accepted refugees from around the world, from Tibet, from Afghanistan, from Sri Lanka, from East Pakistan, right? So India had allowed Rohingya refugees to cross over, and around 40,000 Rohingyas are settled in Northeast India, in Delhi, Jammu and Kashmir, in Hyderabad, etc. This is where you find the Rohingya refugees in India. So over the last 40 years, around 40,000 plus refugees have come in, according to the Home Ministry. Many refugees have even taken the sea route, the risky sea route to Southeast Asia. They have tried entering Thailand and Malaysia as well to save their lives. Is that clear? This is a grave humanitarian crisis that Rohingyas have faced. They take these risky boats, all right, very small, rudimentary, outdated boats. It is crowded with the refugees. Many times the boats will sink, resulting in the death of all the refugees. One such incident happened recently. A boat sunk here in Bay of Bengal, killing all the refugees on board. So this has become a dire humanitarian situation because refugees are desperate to run away from here, to save their lives, to protect their families. And that's why they're trying to enter Bangladesh or India or Thailand or Malaysia. This crisis has existed from almost 40 plus years, but it escalated in 2012, 2016, and 2017. During these years, there was massive targeted violence against Rohingyas, which triggered a huge humanitarian crisis. Is that clear? A massive humanitarian crisis was triggered recently from 2012 to 2017. Because see, what happened was the Rohingyas who have been targeted and persecuted from decades, some of them, they have been frustrated, they have been resenting Myanmar. They have hatred against the radical Buddhists who have targeted them. They have hatred against Myanmar's army, which has tolerated the violence, which has in itself carried out violence against the Rohingya Muslims. So some of the victims of this violence, those who have been targeted, those who have suffered, they hold a grudge, they hold a resentment, and they have been radicalized. And they have set up a terrorist group called ARSA to counter Myanmar's army and also to attack the radical Buddhists and the Buddhist heritage sites in Myanmar. ARSA stands for Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army. The Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army. All right? This is a terrorist organization formed by few radical Rohingyas. After facing years of persecution and violence, some of them have taken the wrong route. They have become radicalized and they've taken up terrorism against Myanmar, targeting the Buddhists and the Buddhist pilgrimage sites and the Myanmar army. So as ARSA started carrying out these terror attacks, it was countered by Myanmar's army, and in the name of counter-terrorism, targeted violence has been carried out in Rakhine state, almost leading to a genocide of the Rohingya community. This has been the major problem since 2012. Whenever ARSA carries out a terror attack, Myanmar's army retaliates. It launches these so-called counter-terror operations. In the name of countering terrorism, Myanmar has been targeting innocent civilians. Innocent Rohingya civilians are targeted who have nothing to do with ARSA. Entire villages are destroyed. Hundreds of people are killed and slaughtered. Even women, children are not spared, and mass killings have taken place here in Rakhine state. Radical Buddhists are also responsible. The majoritarian community has targeted the minority group. So this has led to a genocide-like situation, and the United Nations has labeled Rohingyas as the world's most persecuted community. Rohingyas are considered as the world's most persecuted community. Is that clear? They have faced a lot of violence, a lot of atrocities, thus leading to this humanitarian crisis. So in 2012, 2016, 2017, the violence really escalated. There was a major attack by ARSA, and Myanmar's army retaliated. And by carrying out these counter-terror operations, it killed a number of innocent civilians in Rakhine state. Thousands and thousands of killings took place according to reports, thus triggering a massive refugee crisis in the region. It became the biggest humanitarian crisis of the region. Lakhs of Rohingyas fled Rakhine state to save their lives. They came to Bangladesh in large numbers. Bangladesh had to accommodate them as they started entering Chittagong and Cox's Bazar in large numbers. Many of them fled through the sea route. They took the sea route as well to reach Thailand or Malaysia, hoping that they would be given refuge in these countries. Is that clear? So when this recent crisis was happening, when the UN and global organizations were pointing out that a genocide was being committed and this was the world's most persecuted community, India took a very different position, a different stand with regard to this crisis. The United Nations and other human rights organizations, there are a few global NGOs which work in the field of human rights, such as Amnesty International. You also have another human rights organization called HRW, Human Rights Watch. These are important global human rights organizations. Amnesty International, or AI, and HRW, or Human Rights Watch. All these human rights organizations and the UN, they have labeled Rohingyas as the world's most persecuted community. It means they have faced the maximum targeting and discrimination. They've almost faced a genocide, a targeted violence to wipe out the entire ethnic group. So despite this vulnerable status of the Rohingyas, India took a very different stand in 2016, 2017, which led to a major controversy. When the Rohingya crisis erupted during this period, the Indian government, the Modi government, reversed India's earlier policy towards Rohingyas, and instead adopted a hostile policy against the Rohingya refugees. The Indian government had its own justification as to why India was adopting a hostile approach against Rohingya refugees, but this was heavily criticized by various other stakeholders. That's why you should know about this topic. See, India said the Rohingyas are a security threat. India said Rohingyas represent a security threat as they are linked with terror groups such as ARSA. So by citing this as a reason, and by highlighting that accepting refugees could be a burden on the country, the government said it's going to block the borders. It's going to block the borders to prevent the entry of the refugees. So India was actively taking measures to prevent the crossover of refugees. All right? And India also said we will identify existing Rohingyas and we will deport them back to Myanmar. The Indian government said there are 40,000 refugees already in India. We will identify them, we'll send them back, we'll deport them back to Myanmar. This was the approach taken by the Modi government. Why? Because the Modi government feels that Rohingyas represent a security threat because of their links with ARSA, which is a terrorist organization. Because of this policy, India has faced a lot of criticism. So let's look at both sides of the argument. Let's see what the government is saying. Let's look at the criticism as well. See, there's no doubt that ARSA is a terrorist group. There's no doubt about it. ARSA is a terrorist organization. It is known to have links with Lashkar-e-Toiba, with the ISI of Pakistan, which is the Pakistani intelligence agency. It has links with Al-Qaeda and few Islamic State modules as well. This has been very well established by intelligence agencies. So there's no doubt that ARSA is a threat to India. It is a security threat. Let me tell you why. Because see, ARSA has multiple motivations to target India. Point number one, India is the birthplace of Buddhism. Radical Buddhists are the ones who have targeted Rohingyas, violated their human rights. So ARSA has a grudge against Buddhism and Buddhist sites. There are several important pilgrimage sites in India which could be targeted. In fact, we have already seen one such attack. Fortunately, it was a failed attack at Bodh Gaya. At Bodh Gaya in Bihar, which is a sacred Buddhist pilgrimage site, an attempt was made to carry out an attack, and Indian intelligence agencies believe that it was planned and executed by ARSA. So ARSA could attack India because of our Buddhist heritage. India is the birthplace of Buddhism. There are important Buddhist sites in India. So ARSA could possibly attack. Second reason, we have never criticized Myanmar's government and the army. India is very close to the army. India does not condemn the violations the army has committed, and we are so close that we have given funds and weapons to Myanmar's army. So this could be one more reason why ARSA could target India, because India has not criticized the Myanmar government and the army. Rather, we have supported the army by giving funds and weapons, and this could anger ARSA and it could potentially attack India. And third, the hostile policy of India towards Rohingyas. Since India rejected accepting Rohingya refugees, since India also said we're going to identify and deport the existing refugees, it could potentially push ARSA to target India. These are the three reasons why ARSA can be a security threat for India. There is no doubt about it. India is right in this regard. But however, let me also point out, ARSA is a security threat, yes, but Rohingyas cannot be a security threat. I hope you can see the difference. You cannot brand an entire group, an entire ethnic group, and an entire community as a security threat just because one terror group is threatening our interests, right? ARSA is formed by few radical Rohingyas. There are many who are innocent civilians who have nothing to do with ARSA terrorism, right? So India cannot brand the whole community as a security threat. This is the flaw in India's approach, one of the critical flaws, which was pointed out by the Supreme Court itself. Since India adopted this hostile policy, petitions were filed at the Supreme Court on the grounds of human violations. The Supreme Court was critical of this stand of the Modi government. The Supreme Court pointed out that you cannot label an entire community as a security threat. That's a violation of our constitutional principles. The Supreme Court said we accept ARSA is a threat. Yes, ARSA is a terror group. It has a motivation to attack India. It has links with other anti-India groups. Fine. But doesn't mean all Rohingyas are a threat. You cannot block them out. You cannot violate their human rights. Because accepting refugees, protecting is an international obligation. Is that clear? It's a constitutional duty as well. India's constitution inherently promotes human rights. Right to life in our constitution is available to all people, including foreigners. Right? Right to life under Article 21 is not just for Indian citizens. It's for foreign nationals as well, including refugees. India has a rich tradition, a rich history and culture of accepting refugees, be it from Tibet, from Sri Lanka, we took in Tamil refugees, from East Pakistan, we took in Bengali refugees, we have taken Afghan refugees. So India has a well-established policy in this regard of helping out refugees because they are saving their lives. They are running away from the atrocities to save their families. This is an international obligation under UN Charter as well. The UN Charter makes it an obligation to protect and uphold human rights. The Indian Constitution extends right to life, Article 21, to all people, whether they are Indians or foreigners. Is that clear? Supreme Court also made these observations. It was critical of the policy of the government. However, Supreme Court did not intervene. It did not interfere directly because this is a foreign policy matter. It is best left to the government. The judiciary did not intervene. That would have been judicial overreach because this would have implications for our ties with Myanmar. So Supreme Court did not ask the government to overturn the policy. It just did not intervene here. It only pointed out to the government that you cannot discriminate against refugees. You cannot brand an entire community as a threat, as a security threat, because there's one terror outfit, right? So that was a stand taken in the Supreme Court. Even the National Human Rights Commission had issued notices to the government of India in this regard. The National Human Rights Commission, which has been set up through our commitment to the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, also took a similar stand. The Universal Declaration on Human Rights is a global treaty, a global convention mandating every country to protect and uphold human rights. And India is a signatory. India is a member signatory to the UN Declaration on Human Rights. That's why we have brought out the required laws. It's a UN obligation, an international obligation. We have fulfilled this by bringing out a law to protect human rights. And that law is what establishes NHRC and state human rights commissions. All right? NHRC and state human rights commissions have been given legal backing through a law. And this law is an obligation that India has fulfilled to uphold the commitments under the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. So under all these provisions, we have a commitment to accept refugees to protect them. Is that clear? Then more importantly, India or any country cannot deport refugees back. This is illegal. Blatantly, it is against international law. You cannot deport refugees back to a place where they are facing a threat. And this is called the principle on non-refoulement. It's called the principle on non-refoulement. It's a globally accepted principle. It's part of international law. It is seen as customary international law. All right? So every country is expected to respect the principle on non-refoulement. It basically means you cannot forcefully send back refugees to a place they are coming from. You can't deport them to a place where they are going to face further violence. So, for example, India cannot send the Rohingyas back to Myanmar because if they go back to Myanmar, they could be targeted by the army and the radical Buddhists. All right. So that is the principle on non-refoulement. You can't forcefully send refugees back to a place where they could be targeted again. It is prohibited under international law. It's an obligation enforced by the 1951 Refugee Convention. The 1951 Refugee Convention and the additional protocol to it that was adopted in 1967. They recognize the principle on non-refoulement. Is that clear? But India has justified its stand, its position. India has said we have not breached any commitments because we are not a signatory to the Refugee Convention and the 1967 Additional Protocol. In this regard, India is right. India is absolutely correct. We have no commitment under the Refugee Convention or the Additional Protocol because we have not signed it. We have some issues with this convention, so we are not party to the Refugee Convention and the Additional Protocol to it. But however, it doesn't matter whether you're party to the Refugee Convention or not. It doesn't matter whether you've signed the 1967 Additional Protocol or not, because principle of non-refoulement is customary international law. It will apply on any country, whether they have signed or not, ratified it or not. It will apply for everyone as it is seen as integral to human rights. It is seen to be drawing its power from the UN Charter. All right? In legal jurisprudence, it's been interpreted that principle of non-refoulement is a customary international law, which every country is obligated to follow. It's a basic part of human rights. It's drawing inspiration from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the UN Charter. So this is where India has been criticized. India has been criticized for breaching its commitments, for taking a stand against Rohingyas and for not helping them out. Right? Because we have a history of helping out all refugees. So if you look at the Refugee Convention and the 1967 Additional Protocol, the problem for India is that the Refugee Convention was Europe-specific when it was brought out. It was brought out after the Second World War. Is that clear? The 1951 Refugee Convention was introduced only for Europe initially, because World War II had destroyed Europe. Both the world wars had ravaged Europe. There was massive refugee crisis. So to handle the refugees, to protect them, Refugee Convention was adopted in 1951. Initially, it was applicable only to the Europe region. It was Europe specific. Later, to the 1967 additional protocol, it was expanded, and it defines the rights and duties of refugees. The rights and duties of refugees have been defined under the convention and the additional protocol. Is that clear? So under the convention, refugees are given basic rights. Their human rights has to be protected. They should be given basic necessities like food, shelter, clothing, a job, etc. It also places a set of duties on them. They can't violate the law. They can't engage in criminal activities or terror activities. They can't threaten the security of the country. They can't vote. All right. So such restrictions, such duties are also placed on refugees. So it recognizes the rights and duties of refugees, the rights and duties of the governments as well, which are accepting the refugees. So our convention is an obligation on every country which is party to it to accept the refugees without distinguishing the refugees on the lines of religion, race, caste, etc. You have to protect their human rights, give them basic necessities that are needed. Give them shelter, give them clothing, medical aid, give them food, secure a job for them so that they can sustain their livelihood. All right, they can get registered with the UN High Commissioner office, which is located in most countries, get a refugee card from the UN, and be eligible for further refugee benefits. Along with these rights and benefits, some duties on them, because refugees sometimes can create problems. If there's a large flow of refugees, it can be a burden on the country, an economic social burden. It could lead to demographic changes. It could lead to socio-ethnic tensions between different communities, as locals might target and oppose the outsiders. It would increase communal tensions and divide, leading to clashes and riots as well. Right? Hence, there are some constraints on refugees. They have some duties to follow. They can't get involved in criminal activities. They can't get involved in terror activities. They can't threaten the security of the country which has sheltered and protected them, and they cannot vote. So such restrictions are placed on them while securing basic rights for the refugees. This is in line with protection of human rights. But India says we have no such obligation. We have no obligation towards the refugees because we are not a signatory to Refugee Convention and additional protocol. In this regard, India is absolutely correct. India's stand is right. We have no international obligation under the Refugee Convention because we are not party to it. However, principle on non-refoulement is inviolable. It's part of customary international law. Whether we have signed the Refugee Convention or not, it doesn't matter because it's drawing inspiration from UN Charter and UN Declaration on Human Rights. India is party to both of them. We have signed UN Charter. We have signed Universal Declaration on Human Rights. That is something we can't deny. Those responsibilities is something we can't deny. All right. So this was the approach of India during the latest Rohingya crisis. The Indian government justified it on security grounds and also saying that it's an economic social burden on India. We tried preventing the Rohingya refugees from entering the country, and we tried to identify and deport some of the existing refugees. So we faced a lot of criticism from within the country and as well as from the global community because this was against extradition in India's history. All right. Now coming to the last point here, since we are talking about the refugee crisis, you should know about this island called Bhashan Char Island, which is in news because Bangladesh has built a massive refugee camp at the small island called Bhashan Char Island. At this island, Bangladesh has built a refugee camp to accommodate the refugees. All right. This is where the small island is located, the Bhashan Char Island. It's a small island in the Bengal, present at the mouth of the Meghna River. All right, where Meghna River drains into Bay of Bengal, there you have a small island called Bhashan Char Island. So here, a massive refugee camp has been built by the Bangladesh government to hold the refugees who have come to Chittagong and Cox's Bazar area. Right, the refugees who have entered from here into Cox's Bazar and Chittagong region, they are brought here to this island, settled here in this refugee camp. Now, this has become a controversy because Bhashan Char is a low-lying island. It is below the sea level. It is an extremely low-lying island. All right, and as you know, Bay of Bengal is prone to cyclones, tsunamis, and coastal flooding. This is a major threat for small islands here. There is a fear that Bhashan Char will get submerged. A cyclone or a coastal flooding incident could threaten the refugees and they have no place to run. They can't escape. So global organizations have criticized Bangladesh for dumping the refugees on this island. UN, Amnesty International, and Human Rights Watch, and others, they have been critical of this. They have been critical of the approach of Bangladesh because it appears that Bangladesh is dumping the refugees on a remote, uninhabited island. It has built basic facilities. It has created the facilities for them. But however, there is a risk. There's a huge risk that if there is a disaster, especially a cyclone, it would lead to flooding and submerge the island, thus threatening the lives of these refugees. More than 1 lakh refugees are settled here. Around 1 lakh plus refugees have been settled at Bhashan Char refugee camp. So this camp is in news, and I think it's important for your prelims. You should know what is Bhashan Char Island. Why is it in news? All right. Now see, this problem of migration, this problem of refugee crisis, illegal migrants, this is a global problem today. It's become a global problem because even in the Mediterranean, there is a similar problem which is going on. There are lakhs of refugees and illegal migrants from Africa, especially North Africa and West Asia. We have many countries which have been destroyed by war, conflict, terrorism, disasters, and famine. So from across North Africa and West Asia, from countries like Libya, then Syria, right, Lebanon, from across these countries, people are running away. They're fleeing the region. They are taking the risky boats to the Mediterranean in order to enter Europe. They are trying to sneak into Europe to seek refuge, to seek asylum. And this has become a massive humanitarian, political, and social problem. Recently, I'm sure you would have read in newspapers just a few days back, a boat in the Mediterranean sunk and killed all the refugees who were being carried in this boat. There were a few Pakistani refugees as well. That is the desperation that people are facing, especially in these conflict-hit and troubled countries. They take the help of human traffickers to make this risky migration through Mediterranean. Some of them are refugees, some of them are illegal migrants. They try to cross over into Europe through these risky boats to the Mediterranean Sea. Many people have lost their lives, and those who enter Europe, they seek asylum in European countries. They try to enter Spain or Italy or Greece, right? They enter these Mediterranean countries, and then they go into other European countries like France, Germany, or Belgium, Netherlands, etc. Some of them have liberal policies, they accommodate the refugees, but this has become a major issue, a political issue in European countries. Because the large entry of refugees and illegal migrants has led to social and economic problems in these countries. The problem is, through this route, few terrorists also have sneaked in by disguising themselves as refugees, and they have carried out attacks in Europe. For example, ISIS terrorists, Islamic State terrorists, they have sneaked through the refugee route, taken refuge in European countries and planned and executed major attacks in Paris, in Berlin, and also in other parts of Europe. It has increased the crime rate in Europe. It has increased the social, political, and economic problems for these countries. It has divided European countries between the right wing and the left wing. There's a major divide that has come up between various political parties within European countries. It is changing the politics of Europe itself. So it's become a global issue today, the problem of dealing with migrants, refugees, and illegal migrants. So what's the solution here? What's the answer? The only solution is we need a global framework. It's very unfortunate that we don't have a global framework even today. See, Refugee Convention is outdated. It is rooted in World War context. It is rooted in the European context. It does not apply for every country. The reason why India has not signed Refugee Convention is because it might place unnecessary obligations on India. India has felt that Refugee Convention does not suit the Indian context. It was designed for the World War context, for the European context. It places rights and duties on the countries and the refugees. India's fear is we live in a very volatile environment. South Asia is very volatile. Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Myanmar, all these are unstable countries and we might receive large flow of refugees. So if you take this as a legal international obligation, we will be obligated to accept refugees every time. Taking refugees on a large scale is also problematic, like European countries are experiencing today. So India has a valid point here. That's why we want to keep it free and open. We don't want any UN obligation, any international obligation. That's why we haven't signed Refugee Convention and the 1967 protocol. On a case-to-case basis, we have accepted refugees in the past. All right. So this is where we need to streamline this. We need a global framework to the UN. All right. And UN has begun the effort. A global compact on migration is being worked out through the United Nations to deal with refugees, illegal migrants, and all problems related to migration. A global compact on migration is being brought out. It's an ongoing process. Negotiations are going on at the United Nations. More importantly, India should have a policy or a law to deal with refugees and illegal migrants. This will provide more clarity, more predictability in our approach on how we will deal with refugees, how we will protect them. All right. Right now, we have a very ad hoc approach. Right. We don't have any policy in place, even though we have taken so many refugees. We have taken refugees from around the region, and yet we don't have a policy or law in place. That's why subsequent governments have a different approach. If you have a policy or a law, it can be consistent. You can ensure that no one is discriminated. You can have a uniform approach when it comes to dealing with refugees and illegal migrants. So this is the need of the hour. One, we need a global framework at the level of the UN, and within India, we need a policy or a law to define our approach towards refugees and illegal migrants. All right. So on this note, I would like to conclude my discussion on India-Myanmar. As part of the cultural relations, make a note of the Buddhist Circuit project. This is obvious. I mean, we have discussed this already. Right? In Nepal, Bhutan, we have covered this. So please go through this again. It's part of our cultural diplomacy to revive our Buddhist heritage and pilgrimage sites and connect this with other Asian countries where Buddhism is a major religion. So Myanmar is a focused country under the Buddhist initiative. All right. So that's one point about our cultural relations. So whatever we have discussed here, so Myanmar is a focused country under the Buddhist Circuit initiative. All right. So that's one point about our cultural relations. So whatever we have discussed yesterday and today is more than sufficient as far as India, Myanmar are concerned. We have covered all the key points that are necessary for the exam. You don't have to do anything else beyond this. You just focus on current affairs from here onwards, and that is more than sufficient. All right. So with this, we bring the chapter to an end. Take a short break. Well, it's been almost 2 hours of discussion. I know today the timings have been a little weird because of the delayed start we had. No worries. We'll take a short 10 minutes break if you don't mind. We'll come back and resume the discussion. We'll take up the next chapter and we'll continue till 9:30. All right. Let's take a small break. We'll come back at 8:52, or let's say 8:55. Okay, round it up to 8:55. So I'll see you soon and we'll continue the discussion. India, Pakistan. Hello everyone, welcome back to the session. First, let me take all your questions and doubts related to India, Myanmar, and after that we'll be starting with the next module. We shall be taking a look at a very, very important country, that is Pakistan. We shall study India's relations with Pakistan, and we shall also examine the current situation in Afghanistan under this chapter. Because when we study India, Pakistan, we cannot leave out Afghanistan. When we look at India-Pakistan relations, we have to cover the background to the Afghan war, how the Afghan situation affects India, and what's the current status in Afghanistan. These are important topics that we have lined up in the next couple of modules. So before I start with this big chapter, let me clear all your doubts, all your questions. First, Anubhav is asking, sir, isn't Coco Island also a problem now? See, Anubhav here is referring to the Coco group of islands, the Coco Island, which is present in the Andaman Sea. It's an island which belongs to Myanmar. And according to reports, the Coco Island has been leased by Myanmar to China. There are reports that China has access to Coco Islands, and reportedly China is using Coco Islands for its espionage against India. According to reports, China has set up listening stations or surveillance equipment at Coco Islands to spy on India, because India has important installations in Bay of Bengal. We have the Sriharikota Spaceport of India, which is operated by ISRO. We have important naval bases like Visakhapatnam, where our nuclear-powered submarines are stationed. We have the Andaman Nicobar Tri-Service Command. We have the DRDO's missile testing range on the APJ Abdul Kalam Island. So all these strategic facilities of India are located in the Bay of Bengal. So it's believed that China is using Coco Islands of Myanmar to spy on India, to conduct its intelligence operations against India. So this has been a concern. This definitely has been a concern between India and Myanmar. Because during independence, India had given Coco Islands to Myanmar. We didn't object to it. as part of building friendly relations with our neighbors, Myanmar gained control over Coco Islands. It's quite close to our Andaman Nicobar Islands. All right. So when we settled our maritime borders, Coco Islands was given to Myanmar. It belonged to Myanmar, and the maritime boundaries were drawn. But since then, it's believed that China has gained access, and reportedly, it is running its espionage programs against India. So this remains a concern for India. Aditya is asking why we lag behind China in terms of influence in our neighborhood country. It's because, see, China is a much more superior power than India. It has vast economic resources, which India cannot afford at this point. China has a vastly superior military compared to India. India is a formidable economy, we are a formidable military force, but China is many steps ahead of India. So this economic military advantage gives China the leverage in most countries. Chintan has a similar question. Why India is facing hindrance in each and every country, whereas China, rival, be it Nepal, Bangladesh, Myanmar, it is able to complete their projects. Again, more or less the same answer. See, India has done its best. We have seen a lot of success. We have many achievements. And of course, there will be shortcomings. There will be some failures. Even for China, no relationship is perfect, right? There will be some positives. There will be some drawbacks. So when you are evaluating the relationship, we talk about all these aspects. So sometimes you feel that we have compromised our interests, but you're not looking at the other side. You're not looking at the achievements we have made, right? Plus, China is a vastly superior power. It has greater economic military resources where it can outcompete India. So it's an ongoing competition. We are evolving. We are developing our policy as well. But yes, China is definitely steps ahead of India. Sachin is asking if India can intercept China's ships in Bay of Bengal. No, you can't. See, freedom of navigation is an international right. It's a fundamental right recognized under UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. The UN clause, which is an international law, recognizes freedom of navigation as a fundamental right in international waters. You can prevent the entry of a ship only in your territorial waters, only within 12 nautical miles from your coastline. Beyond 12 nautical miles, international waters will start. You cannot prevent the movement of any ship because freedom of navigation is a fundamental right. Utkarsh is asking, sir, we are providing weapons and other support accessories to Myanmar after knowing what they are doing. My question is, when NLD party, if it comes back to power, won't they hold a negative image of India? See, that is highly unlikely because NLD right now has been completely broken apart. The Myanmar army has broken the party apart. Even if democracy were to come back, even if a democratic government were to come back, India will reach out to that new government. We will build close relations with them as well. There's no reason for them to hold a grudge because this is not India's creation. Neither India played a direct role in the crisis in Myanmar, right? They will understand that every country will protect their own interests, so that shouldn't be an issue going forward. Zeba is asking from where and why did Rohingyas come to Myanmar? I told you, Rohingyas came from Chittagong and Cox's Bazar area, or today's Bangladesh. It was a natural migration due to economic and political reasons. Chitra is asking, differentiating between innocent Rohingyas and ARSA sympathizers is difficult. How to handle such ethical issues? See, that is where your security intelligence agencies come in. That is their job. We have a set of security forces, intelligence agencies, and their job is to target the terror groups. So they have to identify the terror outfits, the sympathizers, and target them, while we deal on a humanitarian ground with the Rohingya civilians. Prakar is asking, what's the current status of Rohingyas? The current status is more or less the same. The violence has subsided because China intervened. China mediated a settlement between Bangladesh and Myanmar. It asked Myanmar to call for a ceasefire to end its counter-terror operations, and China promised assistance to international community. It promised to bring international help from other countries and other international organizations so Rohingyas could be settled both in Myanmar and Bangladesh. So those refugees who are in Bangladesh, they have been settled in Bangladesh, and those who remain in Myanmar, they stay in Myanmar, and the problem, the discrimination continues, but the violence has subsided, the violence has gone down. Shreya is asking, India could have followed the previous policy of accepting refugees without any change in its relations with Myanmar's army. Then why did we take the drastic step? As I told you, India's concern was a security threat from ARSA, plus the burden of taking refugees. On these grounds, India took a stand against accepting Rohingya refugees. Okay, so guys, these were the questions. Now let's move to the next chapter, a very, very important topic, where we will be covering Pakistan and Afghanistan. So let's begin with this chapter. Let's try to set the foundation today, and tomorrow we will wrap up this topic in complete detail. You're looking at the map of Pakistan. I want you to be familiar with some important locations before I proceed with my discussion. When you look at Pakistan, you should be familiar with the borders that we have with India and Pakistan, the borders between Afghanistan and Pakistan as well. You should know which are the neighboring countries, the key provinces of Pakistan, the important cities and locations. So Pakistan is bound by India, Afghanistan and Iran, and of course, even China comes into picture here. The Xinjiang province of China. Is that clear? So if you look at the key provinces, it includes the Punjab region, which was split between India and Pakistan during partition. The Sindh province, which was also partitioned, right? Gujarat came to India. The Sindh region, the other part of Sindh, fell into Pakistan. This is where you have Karachi, the commercial center of Pakistan, also a hub of radical groups and criminal groups. There are a lot of criminal cartels that function out of Karachi. Many terrorist groups have a presence in Karachi as well. It's a major seaport, a naval base for Pakistani Navy. All right, it faces the Arabian Sea here. Then you have the largest province of Pakistan, that is Balochistan. This is where you find the Baloch ethnic group, the Baloch people. The Baloch people can be found in Balochistan. They are found in parts of Iran as well. During independence, the Baloch people wanted complete independence. They didn't want to join Pakistan. They tried to break away from Pakistan, but Pakistan has forcefully kept Balochistan under its control. That is why the Baloch people have rebelled. They have set up their own insurgent groups. And even today, there's an active insurgency going on in this region. Pakistan targets the Baloch groups. It has committed a lot of human rights violations in order to control Balochistan. Because Balochistan is not just the largest province, it is blessed with resources. It opens to the Arabian Sea. It has an important port, the Gwadar port over here, which China has developed. This is a Chinese developed port, the Gwadar port. All right. So Pakistan has controlled Balochistan through military force, committed a lot of atrocities and violations, and there's a constant conflict going on in Balochistan. Its capital, Quetta, has been a hub of the town. The Afghan Taliban from the neighboring country has been sheltered over here in Quetta. All right. Then this is the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. Here you find the tribal belt of Pakistan, where it has borders with Afghanistan on the other side. This is the terror sanctuary of Pakistan. It's largely over here in this belt that you find the terror camps to be located. There are multiple terror organizations operating in this belt, in the tribal belt. All right, and this line you see here, the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan, it's called the Durand Line. It was drawn by the Durand Commission between British India and the then Afghanistan. Right, when Britain retreated for a short period, Britain had occupied Afghanistan, but eventually Britain had to retreat. Right, the locals of Afghanistan, they fought back, they resisted the colonial occupation, and the British were pushed out of the country. So when the boundaries were drawn between British India and Afghanistan, Durand Commission drew the boundaries, so it's called the Durand Line. All right. Similarly, the India-Pakistan boundary is called Radcliffe Line. I had mentioned this when we spoke about India-Bangladesh. Radcliffe Commission drew the boundary between India and Pakistan. So the states that share the border are Gujarat, Rajasthan, Punjab, and of course the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Now they are Union Territories, but before we had the state of J&K. So if you look at the India-Pakistan border, there are two types of border. We have an international border, which is a settled border from Gujarat till almost Jammu. This whole stretch of the border that you see here, from Gujarat to Rajasthan to Punjab, reaching till Jammu. This is a settled boundary. We have no disputes here. It's a final boundary which has been accepted. It's called IB. That's why it's called international border. We have a minor dispute over here in the Kutch region called the Sir Creek dispute. I'm going to discuss this in detail in tomorrow's class. We have a minor dispute here in the Kutch region, in the Rann Kutch area, which is a marshy wetland area. So there's a small dispute between India and Pakistan at Sir Creek, called the Sir Creek dispute. Other than this minor dispute, the border from Gujarat to Jammu is full and final. We have no disputes, no issues here. It's a settled boundary, so it's called IB or international border. But when you move from Jammu towards Kashmir, this region, this is where we have a temporary border called LOC, the line of control, which we studied under the Shimla Agreement. This is a temporary border. It's a temporary de facto border because we have an active dispute and a conflict over Kashmir. Pakistan has captured these territories from India. These parts of Gilgit-Baltistan and Kashmir has been captured by Pakistan. So we refer to it as POK, Pakistan Occupied Kashmir. Is that clear? That is the only term you should be using. You can't refer to this region as anything else. Because see, in the international community, there are different ways of referring to the region. Other countries, third countries, they refer to it as Indian administered Kashmir and Pakistan administered Kashmir. Because they see this as a dispute between India and Pakistan. They recognize that Pakistan controls a part of Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. So they have separate names for these two regions. If you look at, let's say, US or a European country, or even private companies like Google and others, they all follow the same approach. They call it Indian administered Kashmir and Pakistan administered Kashmir. These are terms used by other countries, other third parties. This is not acceptable to India. India does not accept this definition because it is giving legitimacy to Pakistan's illegal occupation. The term Pakistan administered Kashmir gives legitimacy to Pakistan's illegal occupation. That is why we reject these terms. We oppose the usage of these terms. So that is why we insist that the Indian map should be the official map as brought out by the government of India. That depicts the claims of India, because the claim is that the whole state of J&K as it existed in 1947 belongs to India. This is the right, correct position India has taken. Technically speaking, India is right in this regard. So we insist that the whole state of J&K belongs to India, and that is why we depict the whole state as part of Indian territory. We clearly show this in all the official maps. So never ever use this term. Don't call it Indian administered Kashmir or Pakistan administered Kashmir. You might see this in some maps, but that is not correct according to India. India rejects this. We don't accept these definitions. This is used by third countries, by foreign media, by foreign companies, foreign governments. They have the right to do that because they look at this as a conflict, as a dispute, and they have different names for this. But we don't use this. We as Indian citizens, as civil service aspirants, you cannot use these terms. Pakistan refers to it as Azad Kashmir, and it is looking to make Gilgit-Baltistan a province, another province of Pakistan. Now this again is unacceptable to India. Never ever use this term as well. We can never call the region as Azad Kashmir or Gilgit-Baltistan being a province of Pakistan. This is unacceptable to India. The only name which is acceptable to us is just Jammu and Kashmir. We just refer to it as Jammu and Kashmir. To the occupied areas, we refer to it as POK, Pakistan Occupied Kashmir. These are the only accepted terms that can be used by us. That's why if you read Indian newspapers, if you read government documents, right, you will find that we refer to the region as Jammu and Kashmir. We claim the whole state as it existed in 1947, and we refer to the occupied territories as POK, Pakistan Occupied Kashmir. So this is what you should know about the geography of Pakistan. The terror sanctuaries are mainly located here in the tribal belt. This is where Taliban, Al-Qaeda, Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, they all have a very strong presence. Lashkar and Jaish have a presence in Punjab as well. They have a lot of influence and a lot of support here. Punjab is the most dominant province. At Bahawalpur, for example, Jaish-e-Mohammed has a major headquarters here. This is where the leaders, including Masood Azhar, they conduct rallies, conduct recruitment against India, raise funds against India, right? So all the radical activities can be seen in Punjab, in Karachi, in Balochistan as well, and especially the tribal belt, where the terror camps, the terror sanctuaries are located. This is where you find the safe havens and the terror sanctuaries. All right? Now, all the terrorists who are trained here by Pakistan, they are brought to the forward locations near LOC, to the terror launch pads, which are located right next to the LOC. These terror launch pads are temporary facilities. These are temporary terror camps. They are built using simple huts, shelters, etc. The purpose is to keep them mobile. Pakistan, what it does is, it trains the terrorists in these permanent terror camps located in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, closer to the Afghan border. The permanent terror camps are located far away from India, as you can see. It's deliberately kept them away from India to ensure India will not be able to target them. And it's closer to the Afghan border because there exists a terror base here, which Pakistan has created. There is a direct link between Afghan terrorists and Pakistan terrorists. Pakistan has created this link in the tribal belts, in the Afghan-Pakistan border areas. This is where you find the more permanent terror training infrastructure. The safe havens, the sanctuaries are present over here. So once the terrorists are trained, if they have to be pushed into India, then they are brought into the launch pads. From here, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, they are brought towards the LOC. They're brought into the launch pads, which are temporary locations. They keep shifting them, again, to avoid any targeting from India. They don't keep the launch pads at one place. That's why it's temporary. It's located close to the LOC, within 15-20 kilometers of the line of control. And from here, the terrorists are pushed across the border into India. That's why it's called a launch pad, because Pakistan is launching the terrorists from here across the LOC into Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan is directly enabling the infiltration, the cross-border infiltration. All right. So if you're familiar with this, it becomes very, very easy to understand this chapter. Now let's begin the discussion. We have at least 15 minutes left. I want to set the foundation, just explain the basic foundation of this relationship. And tomorrow we will completely cover this chapter. See, now if you think of India-Pakistan relations, the only thing that comes to our mind is the conflict, especially the Kashmir conflict and Pakistan's state sponsorship of terrorism. We are reminded of Pakistan's covert proxy war against India, through which it is sponsoring terrorism against India to destabilize our country. Plus, it is escalating the support for the Kashmir dispute and creating problems for India. So we need to understand why Pakistan behaves in this way. What's the root problem here? Why does Pakistan have such hatred towards India? What's the root cause here? Why does Pakistan try to compete with India? Why does Pakistan want to destabilize India? What's the primary reason? Because Pakistan has shared this hostility. It has shared this rivalry with India from the very beginning, right from 1947. Is that clear? This was further aggravated in 1971 when India delivered a crushing defeat to Pakistan and broke the country into two parts. At least 1971 is understandable because 1971 was Pakistan's most humiliating moment. Till date, it is the most embarrassing moment for Pakistan because its country was broken into two parts by India, by its arch rival, India. We liberated Bangladesh by breaking East Pakistan away, right? So it's understandable why Pakistan hates India from here onwards, why it tries to target India. But why does Pakistan have this hostility and rivalry from 1947? What explains that? The answer to this question lies in our colonial past, in our freedom struggle, and the way in which the Indian and Pakistani societies have developed over the decades. This explains the roots of the conflict. See, there is a fundamental difference between the idea of India and the idea of Pakistan. India and Pakistan are fundamentally different, ideologically different states. Pakistan became a theological state, adopted a rigid version of misinterpreted religion, and made it a state religion. From the very beginning, even during our freedom struggle, the Muslim League, which was championing a separate state for Muslims on communal lines, and leaders like Jinnah, they set Pakistan on the wrong path of focusing excessively on religion. This is the root of Pakistan's problems. All right? Whereas India, on the other hand, became a secular state thanks to our founding fathers, thanks to our freedom struggle, which was inherently secular, which brought all communities together, thanks to our moderate freedom fighters who fought against and resisted the attempts of Hindutva extremists from turning India into a Hindu state. If India had turned into a theological state like Pakistan, most likely we would have met the same fate as that of Pakistan. Theological states never thrive. Any country which mixes religion with politics will not thrive. And that to a diverse country like India would have never sustained, it would have broken apart long ago. Today, Pakistan is going through its gravest crisis. It's facing a political crisis, an economic crisis, and a grave security crisis. And all the problems can be traced back to its origin. It founded itself as a theological state, adopted a rigid version of religion, started linking itself with Wahhabism and Salafism, which are misinterpreted versions of Islam. These are misinterpreted versions of Islam that have a West Asian origin, which is more radical. And Pakistan adopted this as state religion and started targeting minorities from the very beginning. Now, this is what explains the communal polarization of our freedom struggle. Our freedom struggle, right from the partition of Bengal, right, was heavily polarized. And we discussed this under India-Bangladesh. And who encouraged the communal polarization? Of course, the British. So the root of India-Pakistan problems, the Kashmir conflict, the tensions, the communalism, the terrorism that we face, it is all traced to colonial blunders that were committed. They deliberately encouraged the extremists on both the sides. They exploited India's communal divide, and to weaken our freedom struggle, to break up the moderate secular freedom struggle of India, the British deliberately encouraged the policy of divide and rule. They encouraged the radical factions, extremist elements like Muslim League and leaders like Jinnah to push them towards a separate state for Muslims called Pakistan. They gave similar support to radical Hindutva groups as well to try to push India towards becoming a Hindu state. Fortunately for India, we didn't fall prey to this radical ideology, and thanks to founding fathers, we became a secular nation. And this is the foundation of India, the ideological foundation of India. India will survive, thrive, and be a strong, vibrant democracy as long as it remains committed to its secular traditions and to the ideals of our freedom struggle. This is what really sets India apart from Pakistan. Theological states, they always meet the same fate. Theological states become conservative. They become obsessed with religion. They become obsessed with radical, conservative, orthodox ideologies. They will not focus on growth or development. Their obsession will become radical religion. And that is exactly what has happened in Pakistan. Right from the beginning, as Pakistan adopted this radical stand of Sunni Islam, it started linking itself with the West Asian stand of Islam, which is more radical. It tried to disconnect itself from its Indian heritage. See, the stand of Islam you find in the Indian subcontinent is very moderate. Be it Sunni or Shia Islam, it's very moderate. It's only in West Asia you find a slightly rigid version of Islam, and this is a result of politics and geopolitics. It has nothing to do with religion itself. That's why I told you in the previous class as well. No religion preaches extremism. Extremism is not linked with any particular religion. But vested interests have misinterpreted religion, and in every religion you find strands of extremism. Be it Islam, be it Christianity, be it Sikhism, Buddhism, we saw examples for that, be it Hinduism or Judaism. In every religion you have vested interests who twist their religious teachings and ideology to promote extremist ideologies, because that serves their political interests. In West Asia you have these authoritarian monarchies, dictatorial monarchies like Saudi Arabia, UAE, and the others. And from the beginning, they are the ones who have misinterpreted religion, geopolitics. They have promoted radical strands, extremist strands of religion, more conservative versions of religion, which is very disconnected, far away from the Indian version of Islam. But Pakistan, even though it has an Indian heritage, even though Pakistan clearly is linked with the Indian civilization and it has an Indian heritage, it has disconnected itself from that Indian heritage, and it has deliberately tried to connect with the West Asian rigid version of Islam. It adopted the religion as state religion and started targeting religious minorities. Right from 1947, Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, Shia Muslims, and even other Muslims like Hazaras, Ahmadiyas, and even Sunni Muslims who don't subscribe to the radical version of Wahhabism, Salafism, they've all faced religious persecution. They've all been targeted. All right? So Pakistan has become a state which nurtures the extreme form of religion. There is a direct link between its militarization and the extreme religion which has taken root in the country. This is what explains the root of the conflict, the ideological difference, the fundamental difference between the two countries. And Pakistan has been driven by the need to place itself on an equal footing with India. Right from 1947, Pakistan wanted to be seen as an equal, as a match for India. This leads the Pakistani elite. It leads the Pakistani politicians, leaders, of course, the government, that is the civilian leadership, and more importantly, the military leadership, the army, the ISI. It leads all of them to get obsessed with achieving superiority over India. From the beginning, India was a very large country with a lot of resources. Pakistan was a much smaller country. Naturally, Pakistan felt insecure. This insecurity has driven Pakistan to place itself on equal footing. Constantly, it has tried to equate itself with India, and especially after 1971, it has even tried to destabilize India proactively. It has tried to extract revenge for 1971. This is something that's very, very clear. So as Pakistani elite got obsessed with India, started looking at India as the primary threat, a dual power center has emerged in the country. There is a dual power center, a clear division of power. You have an elected civilian government, which is just a puppet in the hands of the deep state of Pakistan. We call the army and the ISI as the deep state of Pakistan, which is the hidden part of the Pakistani state. Because all the real power, the real authority, the real decision-making powers is vested with the Pakistani army and the ISI. They control all the key decisions from behind the scenes. They secretly take all the big decisions, whereas the elected government is a mere puppet. The civilian government has no real authority. So Pakistan is a namesake democracy. It's a democracy for the sake of it. It has elections, it has elected civilian government, elected leaders, but they do not have the real powers. No prime minister, no president can survive in Pakistan. No government can survive without the backing of the deep state. If the army and the ISI are unhappy with the government, with a party or a leader, they will ensure that government is thrown out. Either there will be a military coup, or the leader would be assassinated, or they will trigger a political crisis to change the government. This is something that has happened constantly in Pakistan. The military has always meddled in politics. It's the military, the deep state, which controls the key powers, including its foreign policy, security policy, and its nuclear weapons program. These key areas are controlled by the Pakistani army, by the deep state. If they are not happy with the leader or the government, they will ensure that they will throw the government out and capture power by staging a military coup. Pakistan has witnessed many military coups in the past. Or the leaders are assassinated. A lot of assassinations have taken place. Or a political crisis is triggered to change the government and the leadership. This has become a common occurrence in Pakistan, which clearly highlights the dual power center in the country. Now, this makes it challenging for us to deal with Pakistan. Now, when we have to negotiate with Pakistan, obviously we will talk to the elected civilian government, not to the military. The Indian government, the US government, they will engage with the civilian leadership. But the civilian government has no authority, no real power. All the key decisions are made by the deep state, the hidden part of the Pakistani state, that is the army and the ISI. It is this deep state which has projected India as an imminent threat, as an imminent enemy. It is the deep state which has sponsored terrorism and waged the covert proxy war against India. It is the deep state which has turned Pakistan and Afghanistan into a terror sanctuary, into a terror hub that threatens not just India but threatens the whole world. All right? So it's natural for India Pakistan to have this hostility because of that threatens not just India but threatens the whole that Pakistan adopted into a terror hub that threatens not just India but threatens the whole world. All right? So it's natural for India Pakistan to have this hostility because of the approach Pakistan has taken towards the relationship. Pakistan has always believed that it should bleed India to 1,000 cuts. Reportedly, this is a strategy that Pakistan adopted in mid-1970s after losing the 1971 war. After India broke East Pakistan and liberated Bangladesh, it became Pakistan's most embarrassing, humiliating moment. So since then, Pakistan sought revenge against India. It realized that India was a conventionally superior power. India had an advantage in a conventional war because India had conventional superiority in armed forces. Our armed forces have always had conventional superiority over Pakistani armed forces. Our army, navy, air force, the conventional forces of India, we've always had superiority over Pakistani forces. So by 1971, it became clear to Pakistan that it cannot win a conventional war against India. It had lost the 1947 war. It was pushed back in the 1965 conflict, and it was completely defeated and broken apart in the 1971 war. These three wars taught Pakistan a lesson that India is a conventionally superior power. It cannot be defeated in the battlefield. It cannot be defeated through conventional methods. That is why in the mid-1970s, Pakistan adopted the strategy of permanently destabilizing India, permanently destabilizing the country by bleeding India to 1,000 cuts. Instead of launching one war, which Pakistan cannot win, it decided that it's a better approach to keep launching small attacks, multiple attacks over a period of time to bleed India and to weaken India to destabilize the country. All right? In mid-1970s, Pakistan had a very high-level meeting at Rawalpindi, which is the headquarters of the Pakistani army. And according to several credible reports, Indian intelligence had penetrated this meeting. India's RAW had an asset who was reporting to India inside this meeting. At this meeting, all the top Pakistani generals, the ISI officials were present, along with the Pakistani political leadership. And they decided to take revenge on India for the 1971 war, and they gave a call. They literally referred to bleeding India to 1,000 cuts. This has been well documented. India got intelligence regarding this, and that is what you see implemented from 1970s, 1980s. It essentially means Pakistan has sponsored a covert proxy war against India. This has become Pakistan's approach, Pakistan's strategy against India. Since 1970s till now, for almost 50 plus years, this is the approach of Pakistan. It is fighting a covert war, meaning it's a secret war. Covert means secret. It's a proxy war because it's using proxies. State actors are using non-state actors to target India and attack India. Pakistani state actors, the ISI, which is Pakistan's intelligence agency, and the army. This is the deep state of Pakistan. So these state actors are sponsoring non-state actors such as terrorist outfits and using them as proxies to target India and fight against India. This has become Pakistan's approach in the last 50 years towards India. It's been fighting a low-cost proxy war, a covert proxy war to target and destabilize India by bleeding India to 1,000 cuts. Because proxy wars are low cost compared to conventional wars, which are very, very expensive. To fight a conventional war, you need billions of dollars. You need large armed forces, large military equipment like ships, submarines, fighter jets, etc. Right? You need missiles, you need the weapons, if you're escalating it to the nuclear level. So that is not conducive for Pakistan. Yes, Pakistan has built up the arsenal, but it never plans to go to a conventional war with India because it has developed these non-conventional or unconventional methods, which is much more cheaper and effective. Sponsoring terror groups to repeatedly attack the country and exploit the communal divide in the country is much more effective as a strategy for Pakistan. It doesn't incur a huge cost in terms of money. The funds required to sponsor terrorism is less. The human cost of proxy war is also less for Pakistan. That is an advantage of a covert proxy war. Whereas in conventional wars, you spend millions and billions of dollars, you're putting the lives of your soldiers at risk. Hundreds and thousands of your soldiers and civilians could get killed in conventional war. So the financial cost and human cost of a conventional war is very high. It's not sustainable. That is why you cannot prolong a conventional war. Conventional wars end quickly, within hours, days, or weeks, maybe a few months, few years, not more than that. But a covert proxy war, where state agencies are sponsoring non-state actors, it can be sustained for decades together, even for 1 century if required. Because the money required is less, you're risking your soldiers, you're just risking few radicalized youth who are dispensable for Pakistani state, and you're using them to target India. And you can prolong this conflict. You can continue this for years together because of the low cost. You can keep punishing India and bleeding India to 1,000 cuts. And the best advantage is this, because since it's a covert war, it's a secret war, you enjoy the element of plausible deniability. Meaning you can plausibly deny your involvement in sponsoring terrorism. Even if you're blamed for the attacks, even if there is some evidence linking the state agencies with the terror groups, you can always deny these links. You can plausibly deny this because this is a secret war where there is no clear-cut evidence. Intelligence agencies, they know how to cover their acts, how to work secretly with the terror outfits. So due to this secret nature of the war, the country can always deny its involvement and escape full responsibility. So this is a major challenge we face with our neighbor, that is Pakistan. It has been obsessed with India. It has constantly projected India as an enemy number one. It has militarized the country. It has obsessed with extreme religion. And it has tried targeting and destabilizing India constantly. It's been waging low-cost proxy war, sustaining it for decades to bleed India to 1,000 cuts. This is the basic foundation you need for the India-Pakistan chapter. All right. On this note, I bring my discussion to an end. Tomorrow we'll resume this. We'll look at all the key events that have happened in India-Pakistan relations.